I returned home early from a business trip to surprise my wife Sarah for our 3rd wedding anniversary. Walking upstairs to our bedroom, I heard soft voices. Opening the door, I found my 62-year-old father David sitting on our bed, holding hands with Sarah, both looking intimate and comfortable. They froze when they saw me. Sarah's wedding ring caught the afternoon light as she pulled her hand away slowly. David stood up calmly, no guilt in his expression. The room felt suffocating. My heart pounded as I realized this moment would change everything forever. "Cale," Sarah said, her voice unnaturally steady for someone who had just been caught in what appeared to be an intimate moment with my father. "We need to talk." My legs felt weak, and I gripped the doorframe to steady myself. "What the hell is going on here?" The words came out as a whisper, though I meant to shout. David remained standing beside our marital bed, his hands clasped behind his back in that familiar pose he adopted when delivering difficult news. The same stance he had taken when telling me my mother had cancer 5 years ago. "Son, please sit down," he said, gesturing towards the reading chair in the corner. The chair where I used to sit every morning putting on my shoes before heading to work. Now it felt like foreign territory. "I'll stand," I managed, finding my voice. "Somebody better start explaining why you two were holding hands in my bedroom." Sarah rose from the bed and smoothed her blue sundress, the one I had bought her for her birthday last month. She looked beautiful, radiant, even in a way I had not seen in months. That realization hit me like a physical blow. "Cale, your father and I have developed feelings for each other." She began her words careful and measured. "Deep feelings. We've been trying to figure out how to handle this situation in a way that hurts everyone the least. Deep feelings." I repeated the phrase, sounding absurd in my own voice. "What does that mean?" David stepped forward, his gray hair perfectly combed as always. At 62, he maintained the dignified bearing that had made him successful in his accounting practice. "It means we've fallen in love, Cale." The room started spinning. I pressed my palm against the wall, needing something solid to anchor me. "How long?" "2 years," Sarah answered without hesitation. "Since before we got married." The words hit me like ice water. "Before we got married, you've been in love with my father since before our wedding." The connection was immediate. David explained, his tone as calm as if he were discussing quarterly tax filings. "During the planning stages of your wedding, Sarah and I discovered we shared perspectives on life that neither of us had experienced before." I stared at them both, searching for signs of shame, regret, or acknowledgement of how insane this conversation was. Instead, I found 2 people who seemed genuinely at peace with what they were telling me. "We never planned for this to happen," Sarah continued. "But denying these feelings would have been dishonest. We believe honesty is the foundation of any relationship." Honesty. The word exploded out of me. "You call lying to me for 2 years honest?" "We weren't lying," David said. "We were protecting you until we could find a solution that worked for everyone." "A solution?" Sarah nodded eagerly, as if we were finally getting to the good part. "We've thought about this extensively, and we believe we've found an arrangement that could actually benefit all of us." I waited, though every instinct screamed at me to run from whatever they were about to propose. "We want you to stay married to me," Sarah said. "For appearances, for family harmony, for financial stability. But we would live separately on the property." "What property?" "Your father's property," she clarified. "The main house has plenty of room for David and me. The guest house would be perfect for you. It has its own entrance kitchen, everything you need for complete privacy." David nodded enthusiastically. "You'd have total freedom, son. No obligations beyond maintaining the legal marriage for family gatherings and official purposes." I looked back and forth between them, waiting for the punchline or the indication that this was some elaborate joke. Neither came. "You've already discussed living arrangements." "We've discussed everything," Sarah said proudly. Holidays finances social obligations. We think this arrangement gives everyone what they need without creating unnecessary drama. Unnecessary drama, I repeated slowly. Think about it rationally, David urged. Divorce would devastate your grandmother, confuse your cousin's children, and create years of awkward family dynamics. This way, everyone stays comfortable. Sarah reached toward me, then pulled her hand back when I stepped away. Cale, we're offering you freedom. Complete freedom. You could pursue other relationships, travel focus entirely on your career without any domestic responsibilities. Other relationships. Of course, David said. We're not asking you to be celibate. We're simply asking you to maintain the legal structure that keeps our family intact. I noticed Sarah's jewelry for the first time since entering the room. A delicate gold bracelet I had never seen before circled her wrist. A small pendant necklace caught the light when she moved. None of it looked familiar. Where did you get that jewelry? She glanced down self-consciously. Your father has been very thoughtful. My father's been buying you jewelry. Among other things, David said matter-of-factly. Sarah deserves to be appreciated. I walked to our shared dresser and opened the top drawer where I kept my watches and cufflinks. Half the space was empty. Items I had stored there for years were gone. Where are my things? We moved some of your belongings to the guest house, Sarah explained, to help you visualize how comfortable the arrangement could be. You moved my belongings without asking me. We wanted to surprise you with how well this could work, David said. The guest house is beautifully appointed. You'll love having your own space. I opened my sock drawer. Empty. My tie drawer. Empty. They had been systematically removing traces of me from my own bedroom. What if I say no? They exchanged a look that suggested they had prepared for this question. We hope you'll consider the benefits before making any hasty decisions, Sarah said. But ultimately, we respect your right to choose. And if I choose no, then we'll pursue other options, David replied. But we believe this arrangement serves everyone's best interests. Something in his tone suggested that other options would be significantly less appealing for me. I noticed David's reading glasses on my nightstand, his favorite coffee mug on my dresser, a book I didn't recognize on my side of the bed. How long have you been using my bedroom? Only recently, Sarah said. We thought it would help us determine how to make the transition as smooth as possible. The transition. To the new arrangement, David clarified. We want this to be as comfortable for you as possible, Cale. I looked at these two people who claimed to love me while systematically dismantling my life, and I realized I did not know either of them at all. I need time to think, I said. Of course, Sarah said brightly. Take all the time you need, we're not going anywhere. As I left my own bedroom, I heard them discussing dinner plans in low, intimate voices. The guest house felt like a hotel room designed to mock me. My clothes hung in an unfamiliar closet. My books sat on shelves I had never chosen. Even my coffee maker had been relocated and plugged into a counter that was not mine. I could not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them sitting on my bed, holding hands like teenagers discussing my future, as if I were a problem to be managed rather than a person being betrayed. At 6 a.m, I walked back to the main house. I found them in the kitchen making breakfast together, moving around each other with the practiced ease of longtime partners. Good morning, Sarah said cheerfully, as if nothing unusual had happened yesterday. Coffee. I want to know everything, I said. All of it. No more careful explanations or euphemisms. David set down his newspaper. What specifically do you want to know? When did this really start? They looked at each other again, that silent communication that excluded me completely. The truth, Cale, Sarah asked. The very beginning was at your mother's funeral. My mother's funeral, 3 years ago. The worst day of my life had been the beginning of their relationship. At the reception, David continued. Sarah and I found ourselves talking about grief, about loss, about the meaning of connection in the face of mortality. The conversation lasted hours. While I was grieving my mother, you two were bonding. We were supporting each other through a difficult time, Sarah said defensively. You were overwhelmed, understandably. You couldn't be there for everyone. So you decided to be there for each other. It wasn't a decision, David said. It was a recognition of something that already existed between us. I poured myself coffee with shaking hands. When did it become physical? Cale, Sarah started. 8 months ago, David answered. But the emotional connection had been building for much longer. 8 months ago. I remembered that time period clearly. Sarah had seemed happier, more energetic. I had attributed it to her new gym membership and the yoga classes she had started taking. Does that matter? Sarah asked. It matters to me. Here, David said quietly. In this house, when you were traveling for work. I had been traveling frequently for work, trying to build my consulting practice, working 16-hour days to establish financial security for Sarah and me. While I was killing myself to build our future, they were destroying it. How many times? Cale, please, Sarah said. These details aren't going to help anything. They'll help me understand the scope of what you've done. David stood up and walked to the window overlooking his meticulously maintained garden. We've been meeting 2 or 3 times a week when you're out of town, sometimes more when circumstances allowed. 2 or 3 times a week, for 8 months. I calculated quickly in my head. At least 90 encounters, 90 times they had chosen to betray me. What about when I'm home? We've been careful to maintain appropriate boundaries when you're present, Sarah said. Appropriate boundaries. You've been having an affair with my father. We prefer to think of it as a relationship that developed despite challenging circumstances, David corrected. I sat down heavily at the kitchen table, where I had eaten breakfast every morning for 3 years. The table where Sarah and I had planned our wedding discussed buying a house, talked about starting a family someday. Does anyone else know? They exchanged another look. Answer me. Your Aunt Martha knows, Sarah admitted. She's been very supportive. Supportive of what? Of our efforts to handle this situation with grace and maturity, David said. My Aunt Martha, my mother's sister, knew that my wife was sleeping with my father, and thought that was graceful and mature. Who else? Your Uncle Tom, David said reluctantly, and Jake. My cousin Jake, whom I had considered one of my closest friends, knew my wife was cheating on me with my father. Anyone else? We haven't told anyone else directly, Sarah said, but people notice things. The family wants everyone to be happy. The family wants everyone to be happy except me, apparently. That's not true, David protested. This arrangement would make you happy too. You'd have complete freedom. I had complete freedom when I had a wife who wasn't sleeping with my father. Cale, you have to understand, Sarah began. Your father and I tried to fight these feelings. We really did. But love isn't something you can just turn off. Love. Yes, love, she said firmly. This isn't some casual affair or midlife crisis. We love each other deeply and genuinely. I stared at her, this woman I had promised to love and honor, until death do us part, and tried to find some trace of the person I thought I had married. What about our marriage? Did any of that mean anything to you? Of course it did, she said. You're a good man, Cale. A kind, decent man. But what your father and I have is something different. Something neither of us has ever experienced before. Something worth destroying our family for. Something worth restructuring our family for, David corrected. No one has to be destroyed. I laughed a sound with no humor in it. I'm being destroyed. My marriage is being destroyed. My relationship with my father is being destroyed. But sure, let's call it restructuring. Your relationship with me doesn't have to change, David said. I'm still your father. I still love you. You have a funny way of showing love. Sometimes love requires difficult choices, he replied. I'm choosing honesty over comfortable lies. You're choosing Sarah over me. I'm choosing happiness for all of us over maintaining a situation that wasn't working. Our marriage was working fine until you decided to seduce my wife. I didn't seduce anyone, David said sharply. "This was mutual from the beginning." Sarah nodded. "Your father never pursued me inappropriately. We both recognized the connection and chose to explore it honestly." "Honestly, behind my back for 2 years?" "We were protecting you," she insisted. "We knew this would be difficult for you to understand. Protecting me by lying to me. Protecting you by finding a solution before burdening you with a problem that had no easy answers," David said. I realized they genuinely believed their own narrative. They had convinced themselves that betraying me was an act of kindness, that lying to me was protection, that destroying my marriage was restructuring. "I want to see your phones," I said suddenly. They both tensed. "Why?" Sarah asked. "Because I want to understand the scope of what you've been hiding from me." "Kel, that seems unnecessary," David began. "Give me your phones." Sarah reluctantly handed over her device. David followed suit after a long hesitation. I scrolled through Sarah's text messages and found a thread with David that stretched back 18 months. Hundreds of messages. Photos of them together at restaurants I didn't recognize. Videos of them laughing in locations I had never seen. There were pictures of them on a beach somewhere sunny. Sarah wore a bikini I didn't recognize. They looked tanned and relaxed and completely comfortable together. "When was this taken?" I asked, showing her the screen. "Last month," she admitted quietly. "When you thought I was visiting my sister in Phoenix." "You weren't visiting your sister." "I was in Phoenix, with your father. We needed time together away from all the complications here." A vacation. They had taken a romantic vacation together, while I believed my wife was having family time with her sister. I continued scrolling and found dozens of similar deceptions. Doctor appointments that were actually lunch dates, book club meetings that were romantic dinners, yoga classes that were afternoons in hotel rooms. Every excuse, every explanation, every time she had been unavailable or distant or distracted had been a lie to cover their affair. "My career," I said, suddenly looking up from the phone. "My consulting practice has been struggling lately. Potential clients keep backing out at the last minute. Deals that seemed certain keep falling through." David's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "What does that have to do with anything?" Sarah asked. "I don't know," I said slowly. "But I'm starting to think everything in my life has been managed by you two without my knowledge." "That's paranoid thinking, son," David said. "Your career challenges are separate from our personal situation." But his tone was too controlled, too careful. "Are they?" I asked. Neither of them answered, which was answer enough. I spent the next 3 days playing detective in my own life. While David and Sarah maintained their routine, believing I was simply processing their revelation, I systematically investigated every aspect of my finances, career, and personal relationships. What I discovered made their affair seem almost innocent by comparison. I started with our joint bank accounts, something I had not examined closely in months, because I trusted my wife completely. The statements revealed a pattern of transfers I had never authorized. Small amounts at first, then increasingly larger sums, all moving from our shared accounts to an account I had never seen before. Over 18 months, Sarah had transferred nearly $47,000 from our savings into this mystery account. When I traced the account number through my online banking, I discovered it was a joint account belonging to Sarah and David, opened 14 months ago. They had been systematically draining our marital assets to fund their relationship. The expenditures from this secret account painted a picture of a couple enjoying a lavish lifestyle. Expensive restaurants I could never afford, hotel stays in cities I had never visited, shopping sprees at stores where I had never seen Sarah purchase anything. But the real shock came when I examined my inheritance from my mother's estate. My mother had left me $238,000 in a trust fund managed by David as executor. According to the legal documents, I should have received full access to these funds on my 30th birthday 18 months ago. I had never received a penny. When I called the bank holding the trust, they informed me that the executor had been making regular withdrawals for beneficiary living expenses and investment management fees. The current balance was $73,000. David had been spending my inheritance without my knowledge or consent. I demanded copies of all withdrawal authorizations and discovered David's signature on documents claiming I had requested various disbursements. The signatures looked legitimate because they were legitimate. David had been forging my signature with skill developed over years of preparing my tax returns. The money had gone directly into the joint account he shared with Sarah. But the financial betrayal was only the beginning. I hired a private investigator named Marcus Chen, a former police detective who specialized in domestic fraud cases. Within 48 hours, Marcus had uncovered a conspiracy that extended far beyond stealing my money. "Your father has been actively sabotaging your business relationships," Marcus told me when he called with his preliminary findings. "I've contacted 6 companies that declined to hire you for consulting work in the past year. 4 of them received phone calls from someone claiming to be a former business partner of yours, warning them about your reliability. Phone calls from whom? The caller identified himself as David Thompson, which I assume is your father. He told them you had a history of abandoning projects, drinking problems, and difficulty working with teams." I felt physically sick. "That's completely untrue." "I know. But these companies didn't. 3 of them specifically mentioned that they had been excited to work with you until they received these warning calls. My father had been systematically destroying my professional reputation for over a year. There's more," Marcus continued. "Your father has been in contact with a lawyer named Patricia Wells. They've been discussing legal options for having you declared financially incompetent." "What?" "Apparently, your recent career struggles and alleged erratic behavior have created grounds for questioning your ability to manage your own affairs." I realized the trap they had been building around me. Create financial dependence by sabotaging my career. Steal my inheritance to fund their relationship. Document my frustration and confusion as evidence of mental instability. Then use legal means to gain complete control over my remaining assets. The lawyer has prepared preliminary paperwork for a competency hearing, Marcus said. They just need a few more documented incidents of poor judgment or unstable behavior. Like refusing to accept my wife's affair with my father. That would probably qualify, yes. I met Marcus at a coffee shop in downtown Portland, 40 minutes from my father's house. He was a thin man in his 50s with careful eyes and a methodical way of speaking. "This is sophisticated financial elder abuse," he explained, "except they're treating you as the elder. They've created a pattern of dependence, isolated you from objective financial advice, and manufactured evidence of incompetence." He spread documents across our table. Bank statements, forged signatures, legal consultation records, recorded phone calls to my potential employers. The good news is that everything they've done is illegal. Forgery, theft, fraud, defamation. The bad news is that they've been building this case for a long time, and they've been very careful about documentation. "What kind of documentation?" Marcus opened a folder and handed me a stack of photographs. They were pictures of me taken without my knowledge. Images of me looking frustrated after phone calls with clients who had rejected my services. Photos of me drinking beer alone on my patio after particularly difficult days. Pictures of me arguing with Sarah about money during conversations I thought were private. "Your wife has been documenting what she calls your deteriorating mental state," Marcus explained. "She's been building a case that you've become paranoid, volatile, and unable to handle normal stress. In the context of a competency hearing, these photos would paint a picture of a man spiraling into instability. The fact that my instability was caused by their systematic betrayal would be irrelevant. There are also audio recordings," Marcus added. "Your wife has been secretly recording conversations where you express frustration about your career setbacks or concern about your financial situation." "She's been recording me for at least 6 months. The recordings show you becoming increasingly agitated about problems that appear irrational without context. No one listening to these recordings would know that your career problems were artificially created. I listened to samples of my own voice expressing confusion about lost business opportunities and worry about our dwindling savings. Without knowing that my father was sabotaging my career and my wife was stealing our money, I sounded paranoid and unstable. The plan was probably to present this evidence at a family intervention. Marcus continued. Get everyone together, present the case for your declining mental health, and convince you to voluntarily enter treatment while they managed your affairs. Treatment for what? Stress, depression, anxiety? Something that would require extended residential care while they consolidated control over your assets. They had been planning to have me institutionalized. Can we stop this? We can expose it, Marcus said. But we need to be strategic. Right now, they think they're in control. That gives us an advantage. He handed me a detailed plan for gathering additional evidence while appearing to cooperate with their manipulation. The key is making them feel safe enough to reveal the full scope of their conspiracy, he explained. Once we have everything documented, we can present it to law enforcement and the family simultaneously. What about Sarah? Is she who she says she is? Marcus's expression grew serious. That's actually the most interesting part of this investigation. Your wife's background doesn't check out the way it should. He handed me another folder. Sarah Wilson supposedly grew up in Portland, attended Portland State University, and worked as a marketing coordinator before you met her. But I can't find verification for most of these claims. The documents in the folder showed gaps and inconsistencies in Sarah's history that I had never noticed. Her Social Security number was issued in Oregon 5 years ago. Her credit history only goes back 5 years. Her college records exist, but they're thin. It's like she appeared fully formed as an adult 5 years ago. What does that mean? It means Sarah Wilson might not be her real name, or she might be using the identity of someone else. The woman I had married, the woman I had trusted with my life and my future, might not even exist. Marcus's investigation had given me a strategy, but I needed to understand how deep this conspiracy went. My Aunt Martha seemed like the safest place to start, since David and Sarah had already admitted she knew about their relationship. I called her on a Thursday morning and asked if we could have lunch. Martha Thompson had been my mother's younger sister and my closest relative besides David. After my mother's death, she had stepped into a maternal role, checking on me regularly and including me in family gatherings. We met at a restaurant downtown where we used to take my mother for her birthday dinners. Martha arrived looking nervous, which immediately told me she knew why I wanted to talk. Kale honey, she began before I could even speak. Your father told me you're having trouble accepting the new situation. The new situation, I repeated. Is that what we're calling it? Martha stirred her coffee anxiously. I know this is hard for you to understand, but sometimes life presents us with complications that don't have perfect solutions. Complications like my wife sleeping with my father. Kale, she said sharply. That's a very crude way to describe what's happening. What's a better way to describe it? Your father and Sarah have found something beautiful together, something neither of them expected, but both of them deserve. I stared at my aunt, this woman who had helped raise me after my mother died, who had taught me to drive, who had given me advice about dating and marriage and building a life. What about what I deserve? You deserve happiness too, sweetheart. But you can't base your happiness on keeping two people apart who belong together. They belong together. Anyone with eyes can see it, Martha said. The way they look at each other, the way they communicate without words, the way they support each other. It's the kind of connection people dream about. What about my connection with Sarah? We're married. Martha's expression grew pained. Honey, your marriage was always a little forced. We all saw it. You're good people who care about each other, but you never had that spark that makes people truly compatible. We never had that spark. Not like what Sarah and your father have, she said gently. And that's not anyone's fault. Sometimes people just aren't meant to be together romantically even when they love each other as friends. I realized Martha genuinely believed that my marriage had been a mistake from the beginning, and that my father's affair was actually a correction of this error. How long have you known about this? I suspected something several months ago, she admitted. The way they interacted at Easter dinner was different, more intimate. I started paying attention after that. And you didn't think to tell me— Tell you what? That your father seemed happier than he had been since your mother died. That Sarah seemed more alive than I'd ever seen her. What would have been the purpose of that? The purpose would have been honesty. Honey, sometimes honesty isn't the kindest option. We thought it was better to let them work through their feelings and find a solution that preserved the family. What about preserving my marriage? Martha reached across the table and touched my hand. Sweetheart, your marriage was already in trouble. You just didn't want to see it. Our marriage was fine. Was it really? When was the last time you and Sarah took a vacation together? When was the last time you saw her truly laugh? When was the last time she looked at you the way she looks at your father? The questions hit harder than I expected because I couldn't immediately answer them. That doesn't justify what they did. They're not trying to justify anything, Martha said. They're trying to find a way to honor their feelings while minimizing damage to the people they care about. By asking me to live in a shed while they play house. The guest house is beautiful, Cale, and you'd have complete independence. Many men your age would consider that ideal. I pulled my hand away from hers. Would Uncle Tom consider it ideal if you decided to sleep with someone else and asked him to move into a guest house? Martha's cheeks flushed. That's completely different. How? Tom and I have been together for 32 years. We have a deep foundation that would make that kind of situation impossible. So because my marriage is only 3 years old, it doesn't matter. I'm saying that sometimes relationships end, and when they do, it's better to end them with grace than to fight against reality. And you've decided that my marriage has ended. Your father and Sarah have decided that they want to be together. You can accept that gracefully, or you can fight it and create years of family drama. Either way, they're going to be together. The finality in her voice made it clear that this was not a discussion about what was right or wrong. This was a notification that decisions had been made, and I could either cooperate or be marginalized. Who else feels this way? Martha hesitated. The family wants everyone to be happy, Cale. That's not an answer. Your Uncle Tom thinks the arrangement could work if you approach it with an open mind. Jake thinks you should consider the benefits of having your own space and freedom. Jake has discussed this. We've all discussed it, Martha admitted. We care about you and we want to help you through this transition. What kind of help? Well, she said carefully. Your father mentioned that you've been struggling with stress lately, with your career challenges and the pressure of marriage. We thought you might benefit from talking to someone professional. A therapist. Dr. Patricia Wells comes highly recommended. She specializes in helping people navigate major life transitions. Dr. Patricia Wells, the same lawyer Marcus had mentioned, who was helping David explore competency proceedings. Has this Dr. Wells met with the family already? She's provided some general guidance about how to support family members through difficult changes. Without meeting me. She's provided general guidance, Martha repeated carefully. I realized the family intervention Marcus had predicted was already in motion. They had consulted with someone they believed was a therapist, but who was actually a lawyer specializing in competency cases. When is this intervention happening? Cale, it's not an intervention. It's a family meeting to discuss how we can all move forward in a way that honors everyone's needs. When? This weekend, at your father's house. Just family. Nothing formal or threatening. This weekend was exactly what Marcus had predicted. The timeline matched perfectly with the legal documents he had discovered. Will Dr. Wells be there? She might stop by briefly just to observe family dynamics and offer suggestions. And if I refuse to attend, Martha's expression grew troubled. Honey, your father is concerned about your mental health. We all are. You've been isolating yourself, refusing to accept reality, making accusations about people trying to hurt you. That's not healthy behavior. What accusations? You told your father that someone was sabotaging your business relationships. You've accused Sarah of lying to you about her activities. You've suggested that people who love you are conspiring against you. Everything I had said was true, but without evidence, it sounded like paranoid delusion. What if I can prove that my concerns are legitimate? Kale, honey, that's exactly the kind of thinking that has us worried. You're looking for complicated explanations for simple problems. Your business is struggling because the economy is tough. Your marriage is struggling because you and Sarah aren't compatible. Those aren't conspiracies. They're just life. Martha genuinely believed that I was becoming mentally unstable. She was not part of a malicious conspiracy. She was a concerned family member who had been given carefully selected information that painted me as paranoid and delusional. What happens at this family meeting if I don't agree to the arrangement? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, she said. But Kale, you have to understand that your father and Sarah are going to be together regardless of what you decide. The only question is whether you want to be part of the family or separate yourself from people who love you. People who love me don't usually sleep with my wife. People who love you don't usually find themselves in impossible situations either, Martha replied. But when they do, they try to handle those situations with as much compassion as possible. As I drove home from lunch, I realized that my entire family had been systematically prepared to view my inevitable resistance as evidence of mental illness. When I refused to accept the destruction of my marriage, they would interpret that refusal as proof that I needed professional intervention. The trap was more sophisticated than I had imagined. They hadn't just planned to steal my money and destroy my career. They had planned to convince everyone who loved me that doing so was necessary for my own good. But they had made one critical error. They had been so focused on managing my family's perceptions that they had never investigated whether Sarah was who she claimed to be. That oversight was going to destroy them. Instead of confronting my family immediately, I decided to let them proceed with their intervention while I built an unshakable case against them. Marcus had taught me that the best way to expose a conspiracy was to let it fully develop before striking. For the next week, I played the role of a man slowly accepting his fate. I thanked David for moving my belongings to the guest house. I told Sarah I was starting to understand the benefits of the arrangement she had proposed. I called Martha and agreed to attend the family meeting. Meanwhile, Marcus and I worked around the clock to document every aspect of their betrayal. We installed hidden cameras in the guest house to record any conversations David and Sarah might have about their plans. We traced the forged financial documents to establish a clear paper trail of theft. We contacted every business associate my father had called to sabotage my reputation. But most importantly, we investigated Sarah's true identity. What we discovered was devastating. Your wife's name is not Sarah Wilson, Marcus told me when he called with the results of his background investigation. Her name is Amanda Chen, and she's been running this exact same con for years. He met me at a 24-hour diner outside Portland and spread a folder full of evidence across our table. Amanda Chen, 34 years old, originally from Sacramento. She's been targeting wealthy older men for the past 8 years, specifically widowers with adult children and substantial assets. The photographs in the folder showed the woman I knew as Sarah in different contexts with different men. Same face, different hair colors, different styles of dress, but unmistakably the same person. Her method is consistent, Marcus continued. She researches grieving widowers through obituaries and social media. She identifies men with significant assets and adult children who might inherit those assets. Then she manufactures a connection with the adult child, usually through work or social activities. I studied photos of Sarah with 3 different families. In each case, she appeared to be married to or romantically involved with a younger man, while maintaining close relationships with his father. She married Robert Mitchell in Salem 4 years ago. 6 months later, she seduced his father, Harold, a retired dentist with a substantial savings account. She convinced Harold that Robert was mentally unstable and needed financial supervision. What happened to Robert? Harold had him involuntarily committed to a psychiatric facility after Robert discovered the affair. While Robert was institutionalized, Amanda and Harold drained his inheritance and disappeared. The parallels to my situation were terrifying. In Bend, she was engaged to James Patterson when she seduced his father, William. In that case, she convinced William that James was addicted to gambling and couldn't be trusted with money. They had James arrested on trumped-up fraud charges and took control of his assets while he fought the legal case. What happened to James? Suicide, Marcus said quietly. 6 months after his fiancée and father disappeared with his inheritance. I stared at the photographs, understanding for the first time that I was not dealing with an affair or a family betrayal. I was dealing with a professional criminal who had targeted my father and was using him to destroy my life. How many families has she destroyed? That we can document 7. Robert Mitchell, James Patterson, Kevin Martinez and Eugene Daniel Foster in Ashland. All the same pattern. Marriage or engagement to the younger man, seduction of the wealthy father, systematic isolation and financial manipulation of the target, then disappearance with the assets. What about the real Sarah Wilson? Marcus handed me a death certificate. Sarah Wilson died in a car accident in Portland 5 years ago. She was 28, unmarried, no family. Perfect identity to steal for someone who wanted to disappear and reinvent herself. How did Amanda access her identity? Sarah Wilson worked at the same insurance company where Amanda was employed under her real name. Amanda probably had access to personnel files, social security numbers, background information. When Sarah died, Amanda simply stepped into her life. The woman I had loved, married, and planned a future with was a ghost. The real Sarah Wilson had been dead for 2 years before I met the woman claiming to be her. Does my father know? I doubt it. Amanda's very good at becoming whoever her targets want her to be. She probably researched your family extensively before approaching you. She knew exactly what kind of woman would appeal to both you and your father. I thought about how perfectly Sarah had seemed to fit into our family from the beginning, how quickly my father had accepted her, how naturally she had assumed a daughter-in-law role, how seamlessly she had integrated into our traditions and relationships. She played us from the first day. She's been playing you for 3 years, Marcus corrected. The affair with your father was always part of the plan. The marriage to you was just the setup. What's her endgame? Marcus showed me financial records from Amanda's previous cons. Based on her pattern, she'll drain whatever assets she can access, then disappear. Your father's house, savings, your inheritance, anything she can liquidate or transfer. When? Usually within 6 months of gaining financial control. In your case, that would probably be right after the competency hearing, when your father gains legal access to your remaining assets. I realized how close I had come to losing everything. If I had accepted their arrangement, if I had agreed to move into the guest house and maintain the marriage for appearances, Amanda would have had time to complete her plan. What do we do? Marcus smiled for the first time since I had met him. We destroy her at the family meeting, but we have to be strategic about it. He outlined a plan that would expose Amanda's true identity while simultaneously revealing my father's financial crimes. The key was presenting the evidence in a way that showed my family how they had been manipulated into supporting a criminal conspiracy. The beauty of this approach, Marcus explained, is that it transforms you from the problem into the solution. Instead of being the unstable son who needs intervention, you become the hero who saved the family from a dangerous criminal. What about my father? That's the tricky part. He's both victim and perpetrator. Amanda manipulated him, but he still chose to commit fraud and betray you. We have to expose the truth while giving him a path toward redemption. And the family. Once they understand that they were supporting a con artist instead of a love story, they'll be eager to make amends. People don't like being fooled, especially by someone who made them complicit in hurting an innocent person. Marcus helped me prepare a presentation that would systematically reveal the truth at the family meeting. documents, photographs, recorded evidence testimony from Amanda's previous victims. The goal is complete exposure followed by immediate law enforcement involvement, he explained. We want Amanda arrested at the meeting so she can't disappear like she has before. What if she runs? She won't. She thinks she's in control. She thinks the family is ready to have you committed and sign over your assets. She has no idea that we know who she really is. As we planned the confrontation, I felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. In 48 hours, I would either save my family and expose a criminal, or I would be declared mentally incompetent and lose everything I had left. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was fighting back instead of just enduring betrayal. One more thing, Marcus said as we prepared to leave the diner. You should know that Amanda has done this before with father-son relationships, but she's never been this close to success. Your family's wealth and your father's legal expertise made you perfect targets. What happens if we fail? We won't fail, Marcus said confidently. But if we did, you'd probably end up like James Patterson. The weight of that possibility settled over me as I drove home to the guest house where Amanda had exiled me. Tomorrow night I would either reclaim my life or lose it completely. But I was no longer the confused, betrayed husband who had discovered his wife holding hands with his father. I was a man who understood exactly what he was fighting and exactly how to win. The family meeting was scheduled for 6 o'clock on Saturday evening at David's house. I arrived early and helped set up chairs in the living room where my mother used to host holiday gatherings. The irony of exposing my family's betrayal in her favorite room was not lost on me. By 6:15, everyone had arrived. David and Sarah sat together on the main couch looking comfortable and confident. Aunt Martha and Uncle Tom occupied the love seat near the fireplace. My cousin Jake sat in my mother's favorite chair. Dr. Patricia Wells, whom they still believed was a therapist, sat at a small table with a notepad, observing family dynamics. Before we begin, I announced, I want to thank everyone for caring enough about me to participate in this meeting. Relieved smiles passed around the room. They thought I was about to accept their arrangement. I've learned a lot about myself and my family over the past few weeks. I continued. I've learned things that have completely changed how I see our relationships and our future together. David nodded approvingly. Son, we're proud of you for approaching this with an open mind. I do have an open mind, Dad. In fact, I've learned to question assumptions I never thought to question before. I pulled out my laptop and connected it to the television screen David used for family movie nights. For example, I learned to question whether people are always who they claim to be. The first image that appeared on the screen was a death certificate. Sarah Wilson died in a motor vehicle accident in Portland, Oregon 5 years ago. This is interesting, I said conversationally, because according to this document, my wife Sarah Wilson died 2 years before I met her. The room went completely silent. Amanda's face went white, but she maintained her composure. So, Cale, what are you doing? David asked. I'm sharing what I've learned about honesty and family and love, I replied. For instance, I learned that the woman I married is not Sarah Wilson. Her name is Amanda Chen, and she's a professional con artist who specializes in destroying families like ours. The next slide showed photographs of Amanda with her previous victims: Robert Mitchell, James Patterson, Kevin Martinez, Daniel Foster. Same face, same approach, same devastating results. This is ridiculous, Amanda said, standing up. I don't know what kind of paranoid delusion you're having, but this is completely inappropriate. You're right, I agreed. It is inappropriate. It's inappropriate to steal someone's identity. It's inappropriate to seduce a grieving widower while married to his son. It's inappropriate to steal nearly $50,000 from family accounts. And it's definitely inappropriate to forge legal documents to have someone declared mentally incompetent. I clicked to the next slide, which showed bank records documenting the systematic transfer of funds from our joint accounts to the secret account Amanda shared with David. "Dad," I said, turning to face him directly, "I need you to look at these records very carefully." David studied the screen, and I watched his expression change as he recognized the transactions he had authorized. "These are legitimate expenses," he said weakly. "Are they? Let's examine some specific expenditures." The next slide showed hotel receipts, restaurant bills, and vacation expenses. All for trips I had never taken, meals I had never eaten, experiences I had never shared. "This is from the romantic vacation to San Diego that Amanda took while I believed she was visiting her sister in Phoenix. Notice the room was reserved under the names David Thompson and Sarah Wilson." I clicked to the next image, showing photos of David and Amanda on the beach, looking happy and relaxed. "Dad, do you remember this vacation?" David's voice was barely audible. "Yes." "Do you remember paying for it with money stolen from my inheritance?" The next slide showed the forged documents Marcus had discovered. My signature authorizing the use of trust funds for expenses I had never approved. "This is my signature on a document requesting $25,000 for investment management fees. I never signed this document. I never requested this money. I never received this money." I looked around the room at family members who were beginning to understand the scope of what they had been supporting. "But the really interesting part," I continued, "is what Amanda planned to do once she gained complete control of our family's assets." The final slide showed documents from Amanda's previous cons. Legal proceedings, police reports, victim statements. 7 families destroyed. 2 men driven to suicide. 1 man still in psychiatric care 3 years later. "Amanda's pattern is consistent," I explained. "Seduce the father figure, isolate the son or target, convince the family that the target is mentally unstable, gain legal control of the assets, disappear." I turned to face Amanda directly. "The only question is whether you planned to have me committed to a psychiatric facility like Robert Mitchell or arrested on false charges like James Patterson." Amanda was backing toward the door, but Marcus appeared in the doorway with 2 police officers. "Going somewhere?" Marcus asked. "This is insane," Amanda said desperately. "David, tell them this is insane. Tell them about our relationship, about our plans, about Cale's problems." But David was staring at the evidence on the television screen, finally understanding how completely he had been manipulated. "The vacation photos," he said slowly. "You told me Cale knew about the vacation. You said he had encouraged you to take time away together." "I never knew about any vacation," I said gently. "I thought she was visiting her sister." "The money transfers," David continued. "You said Cale had agreed to contribute to our shared expenses." "I never agreed to anything. I never knew the account existed." David turned to look at Amanda, and I saw the exact moment when he realized that everything he believed about their relationship was a lie. "You told me he was having mental health problems," David said. "You showed me recordings of him acting paranoid and irrational." "Because I was reacting to your systematic betrayal," I explained. "You were sabotaging my career. She was stealing our money. I was being confused and frustrated by problems you were both creating." Dr. Patricia Wells stood up from her table. "I think we need to postpone this meeting until everyone has had time to process what's being alleged here." "So, Dr. Wells," I said, "could you explain to my family what kind of doctor you are?" She hesitated. "I'm a licensed counselor specializing in family dynamics." "Are you a licensed counselor, or are you a lawyer who specializes in competency hearings?" The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus stepped forward with the police officers. "Amanda Chen, you're under arrest for identity theft, fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes." As the officers handcuffed Amanda, she made one last desperate attempt to maintain her deception. "David, don't let them do this. You know who I am. You know what we have together." But David was no longer looking at her. He was looking at me with an expression of horrified understanding. "Son," he said quietly, "I am so sorry." The family members who had supported Amanda's manipulation sat in stunned silence as police led her away. She had been so convincing, so perfectly suited to our family dynamics, that none of them had questioned her story. "How did you know?" Aunt Martha asked me. "I hired an investigator when I realized my career problems weren't just bad luck," I replied. Once we started looking at the bigger picture, the pattern became clear. "We almost helped her destroy you," Uncle Tom said. "You thought you were helping me find happiness," I corrected. "She's very good at making people believe they're doing the right thing." As the police car drove away with Amanda, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that the truth was finally exposed. Sadness that my family had been so easily manipulated into betraying me. But I also felt something I had not experienced in months: hope for the future. 6 months later, Amanda Chen was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for identity theft, wire fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. The prosecution had built their case using evidence from multiple victims across 3 states, and the pattern of her crimes made it impossible for her to claim anything other than deliberate criminal intent. The judge ordered full restitution to all victims, though most of the money Amanda had stolen had already been spent or hidden in offshore accounts. I recovered about 60% of what she had taken from my inheritance, and my father voluntarily paid the remaining 40% plus additional compensation for the emotional trauma. David's role in the conspiracy was more complicated. While Amanda had clearly manipulated him, he had still chosen to forge my signature, steal my inheritance, and sabotage my career. The district attorney decided not to file criminal charges against him in exchange for his complete cooperation with Amanda's prosecution and his agreement to make full financial restitution. But the legal resolution was only the beginning of our healing process. David entered therapy with a legitimate psychologist who specialized in helping people recover from psychological manipulation. Through months of counseling, he began to understand how Amanda had exploited his grief over my mother's death and his fear of aging to convince him that betraying me was actually helping me. "She made me believe that you were weak," he told me during one of our first conversations after Amanda's arrest. "She convinced me that you needed protection from yourself, that you couldn't handle adult responsibilities, that managing your life was an act of love." "How did she convince you of that?" "By showing me evidence of your failures that she was secretly creating. Every time you lost a business opportunity or struggled financially, she was there to comfort me and explain how it proved you needed guidance." David had been as much a victim of Amanda's manipulation as I was, though his victimization had caused him to become an unwitting perpetrator of crimes against me. "The hardest part," he continued, "was realizing that what I thought was love was actually just ego. She made me feel young and important, and needed at a time when I was feeling old and useless. I mistook that feeling for genuine connection." "What about the affair, the physical relationship?" David's expression grew pained. "She initiated everything, but that doesn't excuse my choices. I knew what we were doing was wrong, but she convinced me that conventional morality didn't apply to our special situation." "How?" "She told me that you and she had never had real passion, that you were more like roommates than lovers, that she was dying inside from the lack of connection in your marriage. She made it seem like helping her leave you was actually setting you both free to find happiness." Amanda had been a master at reframing betrayal as kindness and destruction as liberation. "Do you understand now that our marriage was real?" I asked. "I understand now that I never gave it a chance to be real," David replied. "Every time you and she hit a rough patch, every time you faced normal relationship challenges, I was there offering her an alternative. I undermined your marriage from the beginning without realizing it." The family members who had supported Amanda's manipulation were equally eager to make amends. Aunt Martha, Uncle Tom, and Jake each wrote me detailed letters acknowledging their roles in my betrayal and requesting forgiveness. "We thought we were being sophisticated about complicated adult relationships," Martha wrote. "We thought we were helping you avoid unnecessary pain by accepting reality instead of fighting it." We never considered that the reality we were accepting was manufactured specifically to harm you. The family established a trust fund for me as acknowledgement of their complicity in my mistreatment. While I appreciated the gesture, the most meaningful part of their apology was their commitment to learning from their mistakes. We learned that supporting someone sometimes means questioning the information we're given about them, Jake told me. We learned that family loyalty means protecting each other from manipulation, not enabling it. With my finances restored and my family relationships healing, I was able to rebuild my consulting practice. Without David's interference, business opportunities returned quickly. Several companies that had previously rejected my services reached out to apologize for the misunderstanding and offer new contracts. Within 4 months, my practice was more successful than it had ever been. The skills I had developed as an investigator during my family crisis translated perfectly to business consulting, particularly in helping companies identify and address internal fraud or sabotage. But the most significant change in my life was meeting Rebecca Martinez. Rebecca owned a small business that specialized in helping fraud victims rebuild their lives and finances. We met when I hired her company to help me organize my financial recovery, and we quickly discovered a connection based on shared experiences with betrayal and a mutual commitment to honesty and integrity. What I appreciate about you, Rebecca told me early in our relationship, is that you've been through hell and came out stronger instead of bitter. You're careful without being paranoid, protective without being controlling. What I appreciate about you, I replied, is that you understand the difference between reasonable caution and unhealthy suspicion. You know how to trust someone while still maintaining appropriate boundaries. Our relationship developed slowly and intentionally. We both understood that rushing into commitment after betrayal was a recipe for disaster. Instead, we spent months getting to know each other's authentic selves, sharing our histories honestly, and building a foundation of respect and understanding. 8 months after Amanda's arrest, Rebecca and I moved in together. 6 months after that, we got engaged. Our relationship was everything my marriage to Amanda had pretended to be: honest, supportive, passionate, and built on genuine compatibility rather than manipulation and deception. David attended our engagement party and gave a speech that brought several people to tears. I learned the hard way that love is not about taking what you want regardless of consequences, he said. Real love is about supporting the happiness of people you care about, even when that happiness doesn't include you. I failed at that with my son, but I'm grateful for the chance to do better going forward. David had become an advocate for elder abuse awareness, speaking publicly about his experience with Amanda's manipulation. His presentations helped other families recognize and resist similar cons, turning his experience into a tool for protecting other potential victims. The most dangerous part of financial manipulation, he would tell audiences, is that it doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like love, like connection, like finally being understood. The people who target older adults are experts at providing exactly what we need emotionally while taking everything we have materially. His advocacy work gave him a sense of purpose and helped him process his guilt over betraying me. More importantly, it prevented other families from experiencing the devastation Amanda had inflicted on ours. 1 year after Amanda's arrest, I received a call that she had been sentenced to additional time for crimes committed in other states. Her total sentence was now 12 years, and she would be required to register as a financial offender upon release. How do you feel about that? Rebecca asked me when I told her about the extended sentence. I feel like justice was served, I replied, but mostly I feel grateful that we stopped her before she could hurt anyone else. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't investigated? I considered the question carefully. I think about James Patterson, the man who committed suicide after Amanda destroyed his family. I think about how close I came to ending up like him. But mostly I think about how fighting back against injustice saved not just me but my father and my family too. What's the most important thing you learned from this experience? I learned that sometimes the people closest to you can betray you, not because they don't love you, but because they've been manipulated into believing that betraying you is actually helping you. When that happens, protecting yourself doesn't mean becoming bitter or suspicious of everyone. It means having the courage to seek the truth and fight for it, even when fighting feels impossible. And what about forgiveness? I learned that forgiveness doesn't mean accepting unacceptable behavior. It means choosing to heal from the damage while holding people accountable for their actions. My father's betrayal was real, but his remorse and efforts to make amends are also real. I can acknowledge both things without compromising my own well-being. As I reflected on the past year, I realized that surviving Amanda's manipulation had taught me things about strength, family, and love that I never could have learned otherwise. I had discovered that I was capable of more resilience and courage than I had ever imagined. David and I had rebuilt our relationship on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. My extended family had learned valuable lessons about manipulation and loyalty. I had found genuine love with Rebecca and built a more successful career than I had thought possible. Most importantly, I had learned to trust my instincts while remaining open to connection to protect myself, while maintaining compassion for others, and to fight for the truth while maintaining hope for redemption. Amanda Chen had intended to destroy my family and steal our assets. Instead, she had inadvertently taught us all how to be better people and stronger family members. The education was expensive and painful, but ultimately invaluable. 2 years after Amanda's arrest, Rebecca and I were married in a small ceremony in David's garden. My father walked me down the aisle in a reversal of traditional roles that felt perfect for our unconventional journey toward healing. His presence at my wedding as my supporter, rather than my betrayer, represented the possibility of redemption that I had almost stopped believing in. Family relationships require honesty, respect, and accountability, I said in my wedding speech. But they also require forgiveness, patience, and the courage to rebuild trust even after it's been shattered. True family isn't about avoiding betrayal. It's about learning to heal from betrayal while still remaining open to love. Today, I work as a consultant, helping families protect themselves from financial fraud. Rebecca and I have started a non-profit organization that provides support services to victims of romance scams and elder abuse. David volunteers with our organization, using his experience to help other families recognize and resist manipulation. We have turned our family's betrayal into a tool for protecting other families from similar harm. Amanda Chen's attempt to destroy us ultimately made us stronger, more compassionate, and more capable of helping others navigate their own crises. I still live in Portland now in a house that Rebecca and I chose together. David lives nearby in a smaller home that better suits his current needs. We have Sunday dinners together every week, a tradition that includes extended family members who have earned their way back into our trust through consistent behavior over time. Our family is smaller than it was before Amanda's manipulation, but it's healthier, more honest, and built on genuine connection rather than obligation or convenience. The experience taught all of us that real love requires courage, especially the courage to tell the truth even when the truth is painful. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, I want you to know that survival is possible, healing is achievable, and justice can be served. But only if you have the courage to fight for yourself and the wisdom to accept help when it's offered by people who genuinely care about your well-being. Have you ever had to choose between accepting betrayal and fighting for the truth? How did you find the courage to stand up for yourself when the people closest to you were working against you? I'd love to hear about your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories about overcoming betrayal and finding justice. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that fighting back against manipulation is always worth it, even when the fight feels impossible. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you find the courage to protect yourself and fight for the truth in your own life. Remember that real family relationships are built on honesty, respect, and accountability, and those values are always worth defending.